Two people wake up tomorrow morning and start their day. They drink coffee, check their phone, go to work, answer emails, solve problems, talk to co-workers, come home in the evening, eat dinner, scroll through their phone again before going to sleep. From the outside, their lives look almost identical, but inside, something is completely different. One of them feels tired in a way that sleep never fixes. Every task feels heavy. Every Monday feels like the beginning of another long tunnel. Life feels like a series of obligations that simply need to be survived. The other person is also busy, also stressed, also dealing with problems and responsibilities. But something about their energy is different. They wake up with direction. Even difficult days feel meaningful. The difference between these two lives is not intelligence. It is not money. It is not talent, opportunity, or luck. The difference is purpose. Purpose is one of the most powerful psychological forces a human being can experience. It has the strange ability to turn ordinary effort into meaningful work, frustration into progress, and struggle into something that feels worth enduring. And yet, despite how powerful it is, most people move through life without ever clearly discovering theirs. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack potential, but because the modern world is extremely good at keeping people busy, while quietly preventing them from asking deeper questions. From the moment we are young, life becomes a sequence of instructions. Study this, choose a career, earn money, be successful, keep moving. At no point in this process does anyone stop and ask the question that quietly shapes everything else. What kind of life actually belongs to you? Because there is a strange paradox about the way many people live. They move faster and faster every year without ever checking whether they are moving in the right direction. And sometimes this realization arrives suddenly. It might happen during a quiet moment late at night when everything around you becomes silent, or during an ordinary afternoon when you suddenly notice a strange thought passing through your mind. Is this really the life I'm meant to live? That question can feel uncomfortable, even dangerous, because once it appears, it is very difficult to ignore. And yet, this moment, this small moment of awareness, is often the beginning of something important. And it is the moment when the search for purpose begins. Many people imagine purpose as something dramatic, like a lightning strike of clarity where everything suddenly makes sense. But in reality, purpose is usually much quieter than that. It often begins with curiosity, with a feeling that certain things matter to you more deeply than others, with a sense that some paths energize you while others slowly drain your spirit. Over time, those small signals begin to form a pattern, and if you pay close attention, that pattern can lead you towards something incredibly powerful, a life that actually feels aligned with who you are. Because when a person discovers their purpose, even partially, something inside them changes. Their focus sharpens. Their motivation becomes natural instead of forced. So they stop chasing everything and start pursuing the things that truly matter. Suddenly, life no longer feels like random motion. It begins to feel like direction. History shows that the individuals who create the most meaningful impact in the world are not necessarily the most gifted or the most privileged. They are often the ones who understand why they are doing what they do. Purpose gives effort a destination. And once effort has a destination, persistence becomes far easier. In this audiobook, we are going to explore the hidden psychology behind purpose, why so many intelligent people feel lost in life, why modern society quietly disconnects us from meaning, and how individuals throughout history have discovered the direction that changed everything. Because the day you discover your purpose is not just another moment of clarity. It is the moment when life stops feeling like something you are drifting through and starts feeling like something you are intentionally creating. Chapter 1. Why so many people feel lost in life. A man once described a moment that quietly changed the way he saw his entire life. He was 36 years old, sitting in his car outside his office building late at night. The parking lot was almost empty. The lights in the upper floors were slowly turning off one by one as people finished their work and went home. He had just finished another 12-hour day. On paper, his life looked successful. He had a stable career, a respectable income, and a future that seemed predictable. For years, he had followed every step that society suggested would lead to a fulfilling life. Study hard, choose a practical career, work your way up, and he had done all of it. But that night, sitting alone in the silence of his car, a strange realization entered his mind, and he suddenly felt as if he had been running for years, without ever asking where he was actually going. The thought was unsettling, not because his life was bad, but because something inside him quietly whispered a question he had never seriously asked before. Is this really the direction my life is supposed to go? Moments like this happen more often than people admit. They rarely happen during dramatic events. They appear during ordinary moments, during a quiet drive home, during a walk alone, or during a late night when the noise of the world finally fades. And when that moment arrives, many people experience a feeling that is difficult to describe. A subtle sense of disorientation, a feeling of being busy, productive, and responsible, but somehow still uncertain about the deeper direction of their lives. This feeling is far more common than most people realize. In fact, one of the great paradoxes of modern life is this: human beings today have more opportunities than at any other time in history. We have access to education, technology, knowledge, and possibilities that previous generations could barely imagine. And yet, millions of people quietly carry the same question in the back of their minds. Why does my life still feel directionless? At first, many people assume this feeling means something is wrong with them. They assume they are unmotivated, indecisive, or simply not disciplined enough. But the truth is often very different. The feeling of being lost is not usually a failure of character. It is often the result of living inside systems that tell us how to move forward, but rarely encourage us to ask where we actually want to go. From a very early age, life becomes structured around external milestones. Finish school, choose a career, earn money, climb higher. Each step provides a sense of progress. Each achievement creates the feeling that we are moving in the right direction. But progress and direction are not the same thing. A person can move very quickly and still be moving toward the wrong destination. Being busy is not the same as moving forward. This confusion is one of the hidden psychological traps of modern life. Our culture celebrates productivity, ambition, and constant activity. We are taught to admire people who are always moving, always working, always achieving. But rarely do we pause to ask the deeper question: what are all these efforts actually building toward? Without that question, life can slowly turn into a long sequence of obligations. Wake up, solve problems, complete tasks, repeat. And while these routines may provide stability, they do not always provide meaning. That is why someone can appear successful on the outside while quietly feeling uncertain on the inside. Because success measures results, purpose measures direction, and direction is something no external system can define for you. Another reason so many people feel lost today is the constant comparison created by modern technology. Every day, we see carefully curated images of other people's lives. Someone launching a company, someone traveling the world, someone achieving recognition, influence, or financial success. These images create the illusion that everyone else has already figured out their path. But appearances can be deeply misleading. Behind many of those confident success stories are individuals asking the very same question you may have asked yourself at some point. Am I actually doing the right thing with my life? The truth is that the search for purpose rarely begins with clarity. It usually begins with discomfort, with doubt, with the growing awareness that simply repeating routines is not enough. And while that realization can feel unsettling, it is also incredibly important. Because the moment you begin questioning the direction of your life is the moment you begin taking ownership of it. Feeling lost is often the first sign that your mind has started waking up. Instead of blindly following the path that was handed to you, you begin observing your life more carefully. You start noticing what energizes you, what drains you, what excites your curiosity, what problems in the world quietly bother you more than others. These observations may seem small at first, but together they begin forming patterns, and those patterns are not random. They are clues about the kind of life that may actually belong to you. Because purpose rarely appears as a sudden revelation. It usually emerges slowly through awareness and exploration. And the moment you begin paying attention to those signals, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Life stops feeling like something you are simply reacting to. It begins to feel like something you are actively shaping. That is why the uncomfortable feeling of being lost should not always be treated as a problem. Sometimes it is a signal that your mind is beginning to search for something deeper than routine, something deeper than success, something deeper than survival. Meaning. And once that search begins, the journey toward discovering your purpose has already started. But before purpose can be found, there is an important truth that must first be understood. Most people are not lost because they lack direction. They are lost because they have been following directions that were never truly theirs. And understanding that truth is where the real journey begins. In the next chapter, we will explore one of the most powerful forces shaping human lives. An invisible pressure that quietly pushes people toward paths they never consciously chose. Chapter 2. The invisible pressure that shapes your life. A young woman once shared a story about the moment she realized she had been living someone else's life. She was 28 years old, sitting at a dinner table with friends she had known since college. Around her, the conversation sounded familiar. One friend talked about promotions, another talked about buying a house. Someone else discussed retirement plans and career growth. On the surface, it was a normal conversation, one that millions of people have every day. But at some point during the dinner, she suddenly noticed something strange. Everyone around the table was talking about the next step, the next salary, the next achievement, the next milestone. And in that moment, a quiet realization entered her mind. No one was asking a deeper question, and no one was asking why they wanted any of those things. Later that night, walking home alone, the thought became impossible to ignore. She had spent years carefully building a life that looked successful, but she couldn't remember ever choosing it. The career path had seemed logical. The goals had seemed reasonable. The decisions had made sense. Yet somehow, the life she was living no longer felt like it truly belonged to her. What she had discovered that night was something most people eventually encounter, an invisible pressure that shapes human lives far more than we realize. From the moment we are young, we are surrounded by expectations, family expectations, cultural expectations, social expectations. None of them are necessarily malicious. Most of them are simply inherited ideas about what a successful life is supposed to look like. As finish school, choose a respectable career, build financial security, keep progressing. These instructions are so common that we rarely question them. In fact, many people follow these paths automatically, assuming that if they continue moving forward long enough, fulfillment will eventually appear. But there is a hidden psychological force at work here. Human beings have a deep need to belong. We are social creatures, shaped by the people and environments around us. Our brains are naturally designed to observe what others value and quietly adapt to those same priorities. In many ways, this ability has helped humans survive for thousands of years. But in the modern world, it can create a powerful illusion. The illusion that the life everyone else is pursuing must also be the life you are meant to pursue. And so, And without fully realizing it, people begin aligning their goals with the expectations surrounding them. They pursue careers that earn admiration. They chase milestones that signal success. They measure progress using standards they never consciously chose. Over time, this process becomes so automatic that it feels natural. Until one day, something feels off. A person may reach a level of stability or success and suddenly experience a quiet, uncomfortable thought. Why does this still feel incomplete? This moment can be confusing, because from the outside, everything appears to be working, but internally, something deeper is asking a different question. Not, how far have you gone? But is this direction actually yours? This is the invisible pressure that shapes so many lives. A pressure that quietly pushes people toward paths designed by culture, tradition, and expectation rather than personal meaning. And the longer someone follows that pressure without questioning it, the harder it becomes to recognize. Because habits become identities, routines become comfort zones, and external approval slowly becomes a substitute for internal clarity. But there is a powerful truth that many people eventually discover. Approval from others can never replace alignment with yourself. A person may spend years earning validation from the world around them. But if the direction of their life is not truly theirs, that validation will never feel completely satisfying. This realization is not meant to create rebellion or rejection of society. Expectations themselves are not the problem. The problem appears when expectations replace awareness, when people stop asking themselves what they actually value, when they forget that a meaningful life is not simply built by following the loudest voices around them. Instead, a meaningful life often requires something much quieter. Attention. Attention to your own curiosity. Attention to the activities that naturally energize you. Attention to the problems in the world that deeply move you. These signals are subtle, which is why they are often drowned out by the louder signals of social pressure. Money, status, recognition. All of these things can be valuable, but none of them can define your purpose. Because purpose is not something that society assigns. Purpose is something that emerges when a person begins aligning their actions with their deeper values. And that alignment rarely begins with certainty. It begins with awareness. With the moment someone realizes that the direction they have been following may not be entirely their own. That moment can feel uncomfortable. But it is also incredibly important, because once a person begins recognizing the invisible forces shaping their life, they gain something powerful: choice. They can begin questioning the paths they once followed automatically. They can begin exploring directions that feel more authentic. And slowly, step by step, they can begin building a life that feels like it truly belongs to them. But awareness alone is not enough. Once a person recognizes the invisible pressure around them, another challenge appears, and a deeper obstacle that prevents many people from actually pursuing their purpose: fear. And in the next chapter, we will explore one of the most powerful psychological forces that keeps people from following the direction they know is right for them. Chapter 3. The Dangerous Illusion of Someday. A man once said something that quietly unsettled everyone listening. He was in his late 40s, speaking to a small group of younger professionals during a mentoring event. At one point, someone in the audience asked him a simple question: "Do you have any regrets?" The room became silent for a moment. The man paused, thought carefully, and then answered with surprising honesty. "I don't regret the mistakes I made," he said. "I regret how long I waited to start living the life I actually wanted." Then he added something even more uncomfortable. "For years, I kept telling myself the same thing. Someday I'll start that project. Someday I'll pursue the work that really excites me. Someday I'll make the changes I know I should make. But someday," he explained, "has a strange habit. it rarely arrives. This is one of the most dangerous illusions that quietly shapes human lives. The illusion of someday. For many people, the search for purpose doesn't fail because they lack ability or opportunity. It fails because they keep postponing the moment when they will begin taking it seriously. At first, the delay feels reasonable. People tell themselves they are simply waiting for the right time. After graduation, after they gain more experience, after they become financially stable, after life becomes less complicated. And so they continue moving forward through life while quietly telling themselves that the deeper questions will be answered later. But time has a quiet and powerful way of moving forward, whether we are paying attention or not. Years pass. Responsibilities increase. Routines become stronger. And slowly, the space for exploration becomes smaller. This is how the illusion of someday turns into a life that feels strangely predictable. A person wakes up, handles responsibilities, solves problems, and moves through the day. Tomorrow looks very similar. Next week looks similar. Next year looks similar. And while there is nothing inherently wrong with stability, there is a hidden danger when stability slowly replaces curiosity. Because curiosity is often the starting point of purpose. When curiosity fades, exploration fades. And when exploration fades, direction becomes difficult to discover. There is a powerful psychological reason why this happens. The human brain is designed to prefer certainty over uncertainty. Even when our current situation is not perfectly fulfilling, it still feels safer than stepping into the unknown. And this is why many people remain in routines that no longer inspire them. Not because they lack imagination, but because uncertainty feels uncomfortable, and so the mind creates a simple solution. It postpones change. Someday. But here is the quiet truth that many people eventually realize. Someday is often just another word for never. Not intentionally. Not because people are dishonest with themselves, but because life naturally fills empty space with obligations. Work expands, responsibilities grow, unexpected events appear, and the moment that once seemed perfect for change never quite arrives. This is why many people reach a certain point in their lives and suddenly feel something surprising. Time. They become aware of it in a new way. 10 years passed, then 15, then 20. And suddenly the question becomes harder to ignore. Where did all that time go? The realization can feel uncomfortable, but it also reveals something important. Purpose is not something that appears automatically with age. It is something that emerges through intentional exploration. The people who eventually discover their direction in life rarely do so by waiting. They do it by experimenting, by trying things, by following small curiosities, by allowing themselves to move toward the activities that naturally capture their attention. In other words, purpose tends to reveal itself through movement rather than contemplation alone. You do not discover your purpose by endlessly thinking about it. You discover it by engaging with the world, by learning what energizes you, by noticing what kinds of challenges feel meaningful rather than draining, by observing the moments when time seems to disappear because you are deeply engaged in something that matters to you. These moments are not random. They are signals that point toward the kind of life that may be aligned with your deeper interests and values. But those signals can only appear when a person is willing to step outside the illusion of someday. Because waiting for the perfect moment is one of the easiest ways to avoid the discomfort of change. And yet, the paradox of purpose is this. Clarity often arrives after movement, not before it. You take a step, you learn something, you adjust direction, then you take another step. Over time, those steps begin forming a path, and that path eventually leads somewhere meaningful. But it begins with a simple shift in thinking. Instead of asking, "When will I finally discover my purpose?" the question becomes, What small step can I take today that moves me closer to discovering it? Because the most powerful moment in the search for purpose is not the moment when everything becomes clear. It is the moment when you stop waiting for someday and start moving today. And yet, even when people begin sensing the direction they want to explore, another powerful obstacle often appears. Not time, not opportunity, but something far more psychological. Fear. In the next chapter, we will explore why fear prevents so many people from following the direction they know might actually lead them to their purpose. Chapter 4. The quiet fear that keeps people from their purpose. A young man once described a moment that changed the direction of his life, but not in the way most people would expect. He had already discovered what he wanted to do. For years, he had felt a strong pull toward creative work. Writing, storytelling, ideas that could inspire people. Whenever he worked on those things, he felt energized in a way his regular job never produced. But he never pursued it seriously. Not because he lacked talent, not because he lacked opportunity, but because of something far more powerful. Fear. One evening, while talking with a friend, he finally admitted something that had been quietly controlling his decisions for years. "I know what I want to do," he said. "I just don't know if I'm brave enough to try." That sentence captures one of the most misunderstood obstacles in the search for purpose. Most people assume the hardest part of discovering purpose is figuring out what they want. But very often, the harder challenge appears after that. It is the moment when a person begins sensing a direction that feels meaningful and immediately encounters fear. Fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of disappointing others, fear of leaving the familiar behind. This fear is rarely dramatic. It does not usually appear as panic or obvious anxiety. Instead, it appears quietly, disguised as logic. The mind begins producing reasonable explanations. Now isn't the right time. I should wait until things are more stable. Maybe I'm not ready yet. These thoughts feel practical and responsible. But in many cases, they are simply the mind's way of protecting itself from uncertainty. Because uncertainty is something the human brain naturally dislikes. For thousands of years, our survival depended on recognizing danger and avoiding unnecessary risk. The brain developed powerful systems designed to keep us within familiar environments where outcomes were predictable. In the modern world, however, these same protective instincts can quietly prevent us from exploring meaningful paths. A person may feel a strong curiosity toward a certain direction, a new idea, a new field, a creative pursuit, a different way of living. But the moment they consider acting on that curiosity, the mind immediately begins highlighting every possible risk. What if it doesn't work? What if people judge you? What if you fail? So these questions can feel overwhelming, and so many people respond in the safest way possible. They stay where they are. This decision often brings short-term comfort, but over time, something interesting begins to happen. The curiosity does not disappear. It remains quietly present in the background of their lives, occasionally resurfacing. During quiet moments, during long drives, during late nights when the mind begins wondering about the possibilities that were never explored. This is why fear can be such a powerful force in shaping human lives. It does not simply stop people from acting. It keeps them close to the life they already know, even when they sense there may be something more meaningful waiting beyond it. There is a powerful truth hidden inside this dynamic. Fear is rarely a signal that something is impossible. More often, it is a signal that something matters. The activities that trigger the strongest fear are often the ones connected to our deeper values, because pursuing them carries emotional risk. It exposes our hopes, it exposes our ambitions, it exposes the parts of ourselves we care about most, and that vulnerability can feel uncomfortable. But avoiding that discomfort comes with a cost. A life built entirely around safety can slowly become a life without exploration. And without exploration, purpose remains difficult to discover. History offers countless examples of individuals who faced this same moment of hesitation, artists who doubted their ability, entrepreneurs who questioned their ideas, thinkers who feared challenging established beliefs. In nearly every case, and the difference between those who eventually discovered their purpose and those who remained uncertain was not talent. It was their relationship with fear. Some people interpret fear as a warning to stop. Others interpret it as a signal to move carefully, but still move forward. The second interpretation is often where growth begins, because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to move while fear is still present. Every meaningful path contains uncertainty. Every meaningful pursuit contains the possibility of failure, but it also contains the possibility of discovering something that makes life feel more aligned, more engaging, and more purposeful. The paradox of purpose is that it rarely appears to people who remain completely comfortable. It tends to reveal itself to those who are willing to explore the edges of their curiosity, to test ideas, to experiment, to move forward even when the outcome is not guaranteed. And when someone takes those small steps, something surprising often happens. The fear that once felt overwhelming begins to shrink. Confidence slowly grows. Clarity slowly appears. Because purpose is rarely discovered through perfect planning. It emerges through experience. But even when someone begins overcoming fear and exploring new directions, another psychological challenge often appears, one that affects nearly every person searching for purpose. The challenge of listening to their own inner voice in a world that is constantly trying to speak for them. And in the next chapter, we will explore why learning to hear your own voice may be one of the most important steps in discovering your true purpose. Chapter 5. Learning to hear your own voice. A man once described a strange experience that happened to him during a hiking trip. He had gone deep into the mountains for a few days, far away from the noise of the city. No emails, no meetings, no constant notifications pulling his attention in different directions. Just silence. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. The human mind is so used to constant stimulation that when everything becomes quiet, it can feel almost unsettling. There are no distractions to hide behind. No constant stream of information filling the mind. But after a while, something interesting began to happen. His thoughts started to change. The usual worries about deadlines and responsibilities slowly faded. In their place, deeper questions began surfacing. Questions he had not allowed himself to think about for a long time. Questions about what he truly wanted. Questions about the direction of his life. Questions about the things that actually mattered to him beyond routine and obligation. And at one point during that quiet hike, he realized something surprising. For years, he had been listening to many voices telling him what his life should look like. The voice of his family, the voice of society, the voice of expectations about success. But he had rarely stopped long enough to hear his own voice. This experience reveals one of the most important challenges in discovering purpose. In the modern world, there is an overwhelming amount of noise. Advice about careers, advice about money, advice about success, advice about how to live. Books, podcasts, videos, and social media, each offering new ideas about what a meaningful life should look like. Some of this advice can be helpful, but when the noise becomes constant, something important can happen. A person can lose the ability to hear their own internal signals. Because purpose rarely arrives as a loud announcement. It tends to appear quietly, in the form of curiosity, in the form of interest, in the form of a subtle feeling that certain activities naturally draw your attention more than others. These signals are easy to miss when the mind is constantly responding to external demands. Many people spend years making decisions based primarily on outside approval. They choose careers that sound impressive. They pursue goals that others admire. They organize their lives around expectations that seem logical and responsible. But eventually, something begins to feel slightly misaligned. The path may look correct from the outside, yet internally there is a quiet sense that something essential is missing. This is often the moment when people begin searching for purpose. But the challenge is that purpose cannot be found by simply copying someone else's path. What feels meaningful to one person may feel empty to another. What excites one mind may completely bore another. Because purpose is deeply personal. It is shaped by your values, your interests, your experiences, and the unique way you perceive the world. This is why discovering purpose often requires something many people rarely allow themselves. Stillness. Moments where the noise of the world becomes quiet enough for your own thoughts to surface. When that space appears, certain patterns begin to reveal themselves. You may notice that certain topics always capture your curiosity. You may notice that certain activities give you energy rather than draining it. You may notice that certain problems in the world bother you deeply, while others barely affect you. These reactions are not random. They are signals. Signals pointing toward areas of life that may be aligned with who you truly are. But these signals require attention, and attention requires space. This is one reason why many people feel disconnected from their sense of purpose. Their lives are so full of activity that there is no space left for reflection. Every moment is filled with input, information, entertainment, responsibilities, distractions. Without realizing it, they are constantly reacting to the world instead of listening to themselves. And when this pattern continues long enough, and the inner voice that guides purpose becomes difficult to hear. But the moment a person begins creating space, moments of quiet reflection, something begins to change. The mind becomes clearer. Priorities become easier to see. And slowly, a person begins recognizing which parts of their life feel authentic, and which parts feel borrowed from external expectations. There is a powerful insight hidden inside this process. Your purpose is rarely something you need to invent. It is something you learn to recognize. It reveals itself through patterns in your curiosity, your energy, and your values. The more attention you give to those patterns, the clearer they become. But recognizing your own voice is only the beginning. Because once someone begins hearing that voice more clearly, another challenge often appears. Action. Understanding what matters to you is powerful, but purpose becomes real only when it begins shaping the decisions you make. And that brings us to the next stage of the journey. How small experiments in life gradually reveal the direction that eventually becomes purpose. In the next chapter, we will explore how taking small steps, rather than waiting for perfect clarity, can slowly uncover the path that truly belongs to you. Chapter 6. The Power of Small Experiments. A college professor once gave his students an unusual assignment. Instead of asking them to write an essay about their future careers, he asked them to run an experiment. For the next 30 days, each student had to spend at least 1 hour a week trying something new, something they had never seriously explored before. It could be anything: learning a new skill, volunteering, starting a small project, talking to professionals in fields they were curious about. The goal was not to succeed. The goal was simply to explore. At the end of the month, the professor asked the students a simple question. What did you learn about yourself? What surprised him was that very few students talked about achievements. Instead, they talked about discovery. And one student realized she loved teaching after helping younger students with homework. Another discovered he enjoyed building things with his hands far more than sitting behind a computer. Another realized that the career path he had been pursuing for years did not excite him at all. None of these discoveries came from thinking. They came from doing. This story highlights one of the most misunderstood ideas about purpose. Many people believe that discovering purpose is something that happens in the mind. They imagine a moment of perfect clarity where the right path suddenly appears. But in reality, purpose is rarely discovered through reflection alone. It is discovered through experimentation, because purpose is not a puzzle that can be solved purely with thought. It is something that reveals itself through experience. You learn what energizes you by engaging with the world. You learn what interests you by trying new things. You learn what feels meaningful by observing how different activities affect your energy and attention. In other words, purpose is not found by waiting for certainty. It is found by moving through uncertainty. This is why small experiments are so powerful. They remove the pressure of needing to make the perfect decision. Instead of asking yourself a heavy question like, "What should I do with the rest of my life?" you begin asking lighter questions. What can I try next? What am I curious about right now? What small step could I take this week to explore something new? These questions change the entire process. Instead of searching for one massive answer, you begin collecting small pieces of information about yourself. Over time, those pieces begin forming patterns. You notice the types of problems you enjoy solving. You notice the environments where you feel most engaged. You notice the activities where time seems to disappear because you are fully absorbed. These patterns slowly point toward the areas where your natural interests and abilities overlap. And that intersection is often where purpose begins to emerge. There is a powerful reason why experimentation works so well. When people rely only on thinking, their decisions are often influenced by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of choosing the wrong path. But when people frame their actions as experiments, the pressure disappears. Experiments are not supposed to be perfect. They are designed to produce information. A failed experiment is still valuable because it reveals something that does not work. And that information brings you closer to understanding what might work. This mindset transforms the entire search for purpose. Instead of worrying about making a permanent decision, you begin treating life as a process of discovery. You try, you observe, you adjust, then you try again. Over time, this process naturally moves you toward activities and directions that feel meaningful. Many of the most successful people in history did not begin their journeys with perfect clarity. They explored, they experimented, they followed their curiosity step by step, and gradually, those steps formed a path. Another advantage of small experiments is that they make change less intimidating. The mind often resists large, dramatic decisions. But small steps feel manageable. You do not need to quit your job immediately to explore a new interest. You can read about a topic. You can take a class. You can speak with someone working in that field. You can start a small project in your free time. Each step gives you more information, and each piece of information makes the next step clearer. This gradual process allows purpose to reveal itself naturally. Instead of forcing clarity, you allow it to develop through experience. There is a powerful insight hidden inside this approach. Purpose is not discovered in a single moment. It is uncovered through many small moments of exploration. Each experiment teaches you something about yourself. Each attempt brings you closer to understanding what truly matters to you. And over time, the direction that once felt confusing begins to feel more obvious. Because you are no longer guessing, you are learning through experience. But even when people begin experimenting and exploring new directions, another challenge often appears, one that affects many individuals who are searching for purpose. The challenge of persistence. Trying new things is exciting in the beginning, but meaningful paths often require patience, effort, and resilience. And in the next chapter, we will explore why persistence plays such an important role in transforming curiosity into a life filled with purpose. Chapter 7. The Power of Persistence. When the path is unclear. A young writer once shared a story about the early years of his career. At the time, no one knew his name. His work was rejected again and again by publishers. Emails went unanswered. Manuscripts were returned with polite notes explaining that his writing simply wasn't the right fit. After months of rejection, a friend asked him a question that many people eventually face when pursuing something meaningful. "Why do you keep doing this?" The writer thought for a moment before answering. "Because when I stop writing," he said, "something inside me feels wrong." This moment captures something essential about the search for purpose. Purpose does not always reveal itself through immediate success. In fact, many meaningful paths begin with uncertainty, confusion, and slow progress. At first, this can feel discouraging. When someone begins exploring new directions in life, trying different activities, learning new skills, experimenting with ideas, they often expect a clear signal that tells them they are moving in the right direction. But life rarely provides that signal right away. Instead, progress often appears slowly, quietly, sometimes almost invisibly. A person may spend months learning something new before seeing any results. They may invest time and energy into projects that never fully succeed. They may encounter obstacles that make them question whether they are capable of continuing. This stage is where many people stop, not because the path is wrong, but because the path requires persistence. Persistence is one of the most important ingredients in discovering purpose. Without it, a curiosity never develops into mastery. Exploration never becomes direction, and small experiments never evolve into meaningful pursuits. There is an important psychological reason why persistence matters so much. Human beings tend to judge their progress based on visible results. If something produces quick rewards, we assume we are moving in the right direction. If results are slow, we often assume something is wrong. But meaningful work rarely follows this pattern. The activities that eventually bring the greatest sense of purpose often begin slowly. They require learning. They require patience. They require the willingness to continue even when progress feels uncertain. Many people abandon paths that might have become meaningful simply because they expected clarity too quickly. And they assumed that purpose would feel obvious from the beginning. But in reality, purpose often develops gradually. At first, there is only curiosity. Then curiosity becomes interest. Interest becomes commitment. Commitment eventually becomes mastery. And mastery often reveals purpose. This process takes time, which is why persistence becomes so valuable. Persistence allows a person to stay long enough for deeper meaning to emerge. Another important aspect of persistence is that it builds resilience. When someone repeatedly engages with an activity they care about, they begin developing the skills necessary to navigate difficulties. They learn how to adapt, how to solve problems, how to improve through experience. Each obstacle becomes part of the learning process. Instead of viewing challenges as signals to quit, persistent individuals begin seeing them as information. Information about what needs to improve. Information about what skills must be developed. Information about what strategies need adjustment. Over time, this mindset transforms the entire experience. Instead of constantly questioning whether they should continue, a person begins focusing on how they can grow within the path they have chosen to explore. This shift is powerful because purpose rarely appears to those who stop at the first sign of difficulty. It appears to those who remain curious long enough to understand what their efforts are building toward. There is a simple but powerful idea that captures this principle. Clarity often arrives after commitment. In other words, a person does not always feel certain before beginning a meaningful journey. They often begin with only a small sense of curiosity. But as they continue exploring, learning, and improving, the direction gradually becomes clearer. Persistence gives purpose time to reveal itself. Without persistence, every path feels temporary. With persistence, paths deepen into meaningful pursuits. Of course, persistence does not mean blindly continuing something that clearly brings no interest or fulfillment. Purpose still requires alignment with your curiosity and values. But when a path consistently captures your attention, challenges your abilities, and encourages growth, persistence becomes the bridge between curiosity and meaning. It allows you to move beyond surface exploration and enter deeper levels of understanding. And often, it is at those deeper levels that purpose finally begins to take shape. The individuals who eventually discover the direction that defines their lives are rarely those who found immediate success. They are the ones who continued long enough to allow their interests to mature. They stayed curious. They stayed engaged. They stayed persistent. And gradually, the direction that once seemed uncertain became the path that felt unmistakably theirs. But persistence alone does not complete the journey. Eventually, something important begins to happen. A person who has explored, experimented, and persisted begins noticing a powerful shift in how they experience life. The pieces start connecting. The activities that once felt like small experiments begin forming a larger picture. And slowly, a deeper sense of meaning emerges. Now, in the next chapter, we will explore what happens when life finally begins to make sense and how discovering your purpose can transform the way you experience every challenge, decision, and opportunity that lies ahead. Chapter 8. When life finally begins to make sense. There is a moment that many people experience at some point in their lives, although it often arrives quietly. It is not dramatic. It is not a sudden flash of revelation. Instead, it feels more like a slow realization. A moment when you look at your life and notice that something has changed. The confusion that once filled your mind begins to fade. The constant questioning begins to quiet down. And gradually, the path in front of you starts to feel clearer. Not perfect, not completely certain, but clearer. This is often the moment when purpose begins to take shape. For years, many people move through life feeling as if they are simply reacting to circumstances. Opportunities appear, problems appear, responsibilities appear, and they respond to whatever happens next. But when a person begins aligning their life with their deeper interests and values, something subtle begins to shift. Instead of constantly reacting, they begin choosing. They choose the problems they want to solve. They choose the work they want to pursue. They choose the direction they want to move toward. This shift can feel surprisingly powerful because purpose changes the way effort feels. Without purpose, effort often feels exhausting. Work becomes something that must be endured. Challenges feel like obstacles standing in the way of comfort. But when a person moves towards something meaningful, effort begins to feel different. The work may still be difficult. The path may still contain uncertainty. But the struggle begins to feel worthwhile. A person who understands their purpose is not necessarily free from challenges, but they experience those challenges differently. They see them as part of the journey rather than interruptions to it. There is a powerful difference between these two mindsets. One mindset asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The other asks, "What is this teaching me?" This shift transforms the entire experience of life. Difficult moments become opportunities for growth. Mistakes become information, failures become adjustments, and gradually, the direction of life begins to feel more intentional. Another important change happens when someone begins living with purpose. Their energy changes. When people feel disconnected from their direction, motivation often becomes difficult. They rely on discipline alone. They push themselves through routines that feel heavy and uninspiring. But when someone is working towards something that genuinely matters to them, motivation begins to appear more naturally. The mind becomes curious. The work becomes engaging. The hours pass more quickly because attention is fully focused. This is why individuals who live with purpose often appear unusually persistent. It is not because they have endless willpower. it is because their actions are aligned with something meaningful. And alignment creates energy. There is a simple idea that captures this transformation. When direction becomes clear, effort becomes easier to sustain. This does not mean life suddenly becomes easy, but it means that effort feels connected to something larger, and that connection makes persistence possible. Another surprising effect of discovering purpose is the way it simplifies decisions. Before someone understands their direction, every opportunity can feel equally important. Every path seems possible, and that abundance of options can feel overwhelming. But when a person begins understanding what truly matters to them, many decisions become easier. They no longer need to chase every opportunity. They can focus on the paths that align with their deeper values. This clarity creates a sense of freedom, because purpose is not about limiting your life. It is about focusing your energy. Instead of spreading your attention across countless directions, you begin investing it where it matters most. Over time, this focus creates momentum. Small efforts accumulate, skills improve, impact grows, and the life that once felt uncertain slowly begins to feel meaningful. But there is something important to understand about this process. A purpose is not a final destination. It is not a single moment where everything becomes permanently clear. Instead, purpose is something that evolves. As people grow, their interests deepen. Their understanding of the world expands. Their goals shift. Purpose grows alongside them. This is why the search for purpose is not something that ends once it is discovered. It is something that continues throughout life. Each stage brings new questions, new challenges, new opportunities to align your actions with what truly matters to you. But once someone has experienced the feeling of living with purpose, even briefly, they begin recognizing the difference. They recognize the difference between drifting and directing, between obligation and meaning, between simply existing and intentionally living. And that recognition changes the way they approach every decision moving forward. Because the day a person begins living with purpose is not just another day, it is the moment when life stops feeling random, the moment when effort begins to feel meaningful, and the moment when everything, every challenge, every lesson, every opportunity starts connecting into something larger, a life that finally feels like it belongs to you. The day your direction becomes clear. At some point in life, almost everyone asks the same quiet question: what am I really meant to do with my life? For some people, that question appears early. For others, it appears later, sometimes after years of following paths that seemed logical, responsible, and successful on the surface. But the important thing to understand is this: feeling lost is not a failure. In many ways, it is the beginning of awareness. Throughout this audiobook, we explored a journey that many people experience but rarely talk about openly. We explored why so many individuals feel uncertain about their direction, even in a world filled with opportunity. We saw how invisible social pressures often guide people toward lives they never consciously chose. We examined the illusion of someday, and how easily time can pass while we postpone the deeper questions that shape our lives. We explored the powerful role fear plays in keeping people close to familiar paths. And we discovered how purpose often reveals itself not through endless thinking, but through curiosity, experimentation, and persistence. The truth is that purpose is not something reserved for a special group of people. It is something that gradually appears when a person begins paying attention to their own life, to their curiosity, to their energy, to the problems they care deeply about solving. Purpose does not arrive as a perfect answer to the question of what you should do forever. Instead, it appears as direction, a sense that certain paths feel more aligned with who you are becoming. And when that alignment appears, something remarkable begins to change. Your effort begins to feel meaningful. Your challenges begin to feel like part of a larger journey. Your decisions begin to feel more intentional. Life stops feeling like something that is simply happening to you and starts feeling like something you are actively shaping. But perhaps the most important insight of all is this. You do not need perfect clarity to begin. You do not need a detailed map of the future. Purpose is not discovered all at once. It reveals itself step by step, through curiosity, through exploration, through small actions taken consistently over time. Every meaningful direction begins with a single step, a step towards something that interests you, a step towards something that challenges you, a step towards something that feels slightly more authentic than the path you followed yesterday. Those small steps eventually become a path, and that path gradually becomes a life that feels less like drifting and more like intention, less like obligation and more like meaning. Because the day you begin searching for your purpose is not the day you suddenly solve every question about your future. It is something far more powerful. It is the day you stop living on autopilot, the day you start listening more carefully to your curiosity, the day you begin shaping your life with awareness. And from that moment forward, every experience becomes part of the journey. Every challenge becomes part of the growth. Every step becomes part of the direction that slowly reveals who you truly are. So if there is one idea to remember from this journey, it is this. Your purpose is not waiting somewhere far away. It is already hidden inside the patterns of your curiosity, your interests, and your values. All it requires is attention. Attention to the signals your life has been quietly sending you all along. Because the moment you begin paying attention to those signals is the moment everything begins to change.